It's time to introduce our guest. You probably all know him as one of the most respected and recognized voices in the fantasy football world, and we know him as the man behind fantasylife.com, one of the stars of Football Night in America on NBC and Peacock, and he's a friend of the Skim. Please welcome Matthew Berry. Hi,
Hi, Blake. Hi, Amanda.
Matthew. Hey.
How's it going? I was thinking before we talked to you, like, I cannot imagine your text inbox this time of year. It must be out of control with
My
friends and
phone blows
family
up.
asking for friends and family help.
Oh, it's friends, it's family, it's celebrities, it's coworkers, it's randos, it's people I haven't heard from. Like, hey, man, we were in fourth grade geometry together. So at my flex position, yeah, it's everyone. My phone blows up 24/7. My wife just looks at it and just like, you know, she's gotten
Yeah,
used
you
to it.
should set up. I would send them like, sure, for a fee of $20 a minute. I'm happy to help. Do you ever get players text you like, hey man, come on, that wasn't cool?
Rarely, very rarely. Every once in a while, maybe I'll get a DM.
Yeah.
But players don't really. They sort of try to, ignore that.
We just did our first fantasy football draft with 24 people in 2 leagues, including a lot of new participants, myself, Amanda included. It might be too late for us given the draft has already passed, but what advice do you usually give brand new fantasy football players?
Well, I think some basic advice is just sort of understand the rules, right? You don't have to get knee deep into it, but just like are you playing one quarterback or two? How many wide receivers are you doing? How many teams make the playoffs? What are your rules for replacing injured players? Like, do you have an IR spot? Or are you going to have to, use a bench spot if somebody gets injured? My advice is to do mock drafts, practice at least once or twice, to sort of see what the experience is. And if you don't know anything about fantasy football and you're like, you don't know about NFL and you're like, I got invited to this league and I want to play, but I don't really know anything about fantasy football. I've never played before. I don't really even follow the NFL. I don't want to look like the dumb person in the league. Pick somebody's rankings. Blake, you're pointing to yourself, so I assume that you had that feeling. I would have said, just take my rankings, and when it's your time, just print out the rankings, and as players get picked, scratch them off. And that as you go down, whether it's my rankings or somebody else's rankings, somebody you trust, but like just when it's your turn to pick, take the player that's the highest person on the list that, that's still available. And I'm not saying you're going to win the championship, but you won't embarrass yourself.
That's all I want. That's really all I want.
Yeah.
That's definitely what I did. And as we were doing our draft, I got some like reassuring, affirming looks like, oh, good pick. And I was like, thank you to my list. Yeah.
But
so you've been
there you
covering
go.
and writing-
I'll just say this. I write an article every year, and you can Google this, called the Draft Day Manifesto, the 7 habits of highly effective drafters. And so, stealing the famous
Yes.
title, but it's a kind of a basic blueprint, Amanda and Blake, that just sort of kind of lays out step by step, like kind of like, okay, so you're playing for the first time. Here's what you need to do this year.
Yeah, I know that has been a really helpful resource for a lot of people on our team. You've also been covering and writing about fantasy football for 25 years. We're so curious, what's changed the most since you first started? Is there any, conventional wisdom from years past that's just totally flipped on its head recently or over
What's
time?
changed the most? I mean, a lot. My hairline, for one, to be perfectly honest. I've been doing this a long time, ladies. Yeah. I used to have a big, full, bushy head of hair. Now, not so much. What has changed? I think the biggest thing that's changed over the 25 years, I'll answer this 3 ways. Number one is that I think just sort of what's changed is technology. 25 years ago, you couldn't play it on, in some cases, you couldn't play it on a computer, let alone a phone, right? And now there's so many apps and like the scoring is updated. And it's just, it's so slick, right? So technology has helped a tremendous amount in terms of getting alerts about players, getting news, everything like that. Also, the coverage is so much more significant than it was 25 years ago. 25 years ago, it was, let's see, 25 years ago is what? It's I guess is 25 years ago is the year 2000, I guess, basically, right? I mean, I started writing in 1999. I've been playing it for a long time. So, it was online at that point. So it was on the internet, but, there wasn't, cell phones weren't, as prominent, and there certainly weren't smartphones where you would have apps and that kind of thing. So technology has been improvement, also just information. Like
Yeah.
25 years ago, guys like me didn't exist, right? Because, and, you would get, again, you wouldn't get alerts. Twitter didn't exist. Social media didn't exist. And so finding out information about the NFL and about fantasy football was harder than it was today, where now, every single snap at practice, you go on social media and you're seeing clips of players doing things at training camp. Like, those things are more prevalent. Players themselves are on training camp. Like, yeah, I ain't playing this week or what, like it's just a lot more. And it's both a good and bad thing, because now there's such a prevalence of news and information out there. You have to sort of sift through the weeds to figure out what you can believe, what you can't.
Mhm.
And the last thing that's changed, I think, honestly, is the acceptance of it into mainstream society. I know that sounds weird, but like I always talk
Mm.
about, like, sort of my career. When I started out, so I started out in 1999 writing for, at the time, a low trafficked internet website called RotoWorld. Over the 25 years, by the way, RotoWorld ended up getting bought by NBC, and now
Yeah.
I'm back again, right? But when I started out in 1999, I would go to a party and be like, "What do you do for a living?" I'm like,
Right.
"Well, there's this game called. Have you ever heard of fantasy football?" Oh, yeah, I have a cousin that I think does it, right? And then it became like, "What do you do for a living?" And it's like, "Well, it's fantasy football." Like, oh my God, I love it, And then it became, I'd walk in and be like, it's just like, "Hey," they recognize me, and "Hey, Matthew, I got
You're
a
the
question to
guy.
flex," like, so it just sort of like, that progress of the idea that I would be on a podcast talking fantasy football, hosted by two women
Yeah.
that work for a daily newsletter that reaches millennial women, is was unheard of 25 years ago, honestly, even 5 years ago. I'll tell you
Mm.
a quick story that I think you guys will appreciate, which is when my wife and I were dating. My now wife and I, we were dating. We'd been dating, like, I don't know, like 7 or 8 months, and she calls me up one day and she says, she goes, "Hey, I need to talk to you," and I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, what's up?" And she goes, "Well," she goes, "Things are going well between us, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I think we're having a great time." And she goes, "Yeah, I am too." I go, "But honestly, I'm really starting to fall for you." And I said, "Yeah, no, it's really, our relationship's progressing nicely." And she goes, "But I got to be honest with you. I don't know if I can be in a serious relationship with someone who's on TV. I
Mm.
don't know, um, if I could handle that." And I said, "Well," I said, "I totally hear you." I said, "Look, on one level, at the end of the day, you either trust me or you don't." But I said, "It's a serious issue, and I said, I want to give it the time that it deserves, and we should talk about all your anxiety, and let's talk about our relationship. And but I have to run right now to work. I don't have time to have a serious conversation. But I'll tell you what, I'm doing an event on Saturday. Why don't you come to the event? And I'll block out the rest of the afternoon after the event, and we'll spend as much time talking about this subject as you want." And she's like, "Okay, that sounds great." That's good. So she comes to the event, and it's like all the events that I ever do, and it's fathers and sons, it's fat guys in football jerseys, it's 99% men. My
Yeah.
wife looks around, my then girlfriend, she looks around, takes one look at my audience, says, "You know what? I'm fine. Never mind.
Yeah.
Knock yourself out. I'm good. I love your audience. I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it at all. Never. We don't even
Perfect.
have to have the conversation." And so, we've been
Forget
we've
it.
been we've been together now for over 16 years, so it's worked
Yeah.
out. But
Oh.
my point is that,
Yes.
it's like my audience for the longest time was primarily men, and it still is,
Yeah.
the majority is men. But the fact is that more and more women are playing fantasy football, that understand it, that it's no longer this weird nerd thing that just a slight portion of America does. It's like it's a massive thing that almost 60 million people play.
Absolutely. I mean, speaking of women who participate in fantasy, as I mentioned, myself included, I'm a little worried going into this week. I'm not going to lie, because a couple of my guys, my roster, falling to injuries, and I'm sure, as you obviously have seen this weekend, we saw a ton of high profile players who fell to injury, including Debo Samuel, Tua Tagovailoa, Isaiah Pacheco, list goes on. So, what is your strategy for someone like me for navigating the waiver wire when a top player is going down? And who do you have on your eye? Who do you have your eye on this week to replace some of
Well,
these
okay,
guys?
so it's a great question. I mean, there's tons of players, right? So you mentioned Tua, also Jordan Love at the quarterback position, at the running back position. You mentioned Pacheco, but Joe Mixon got a little bit banged up. Also, among wide receivers, Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, all going to miss time as well. That doesn't even include like Puka Nakua from week number 1. Evan Ingram missed last week as well. So that, just a lot of injuries that you're
Carnage out
navigating
there.
for. And so I
Yeah.
guess, my advice would be is, well, listen to Fantasy Football Happy Hour, which is my podcast, where we went through this exact subject for an hour today. We air 3 p.m. Eastern on Peacock every single day. It's available wherever you get podcasts. It's also available at all times on the NFL and NBC YouTube channel. It's on demand on Peacock. Airs at 3 o'clock on Channel 85 on SiriusXM as well. We're everywhere. So, but if you don't have time, you can also go to fantasylife.com, where we have an article that says, here's who we would rank. Blake, specific to you, what I would say is that you have to hit, it's all team dependent. And the question is what I would say to you is like, okay, which players on your team are hurt? So like who on your team specifically is hurt? And then who else do you have to replace them?
Well,
and go ahead.
I was just gonna. I mean, I will not even pull out names because I'm serious. I looked at my roster, 4 red marks, O's, and so I don't want to embarrass myself too much. But continue with your advice, Matthew.
Well, by the way, there's nothing to be embarrassed about, Blake. I mean, no one can
You didn't
predict
push them
injuries.
over.
There's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, like you hit some bad luck. That's part of fantasy football. What I would say is that you want to do twofold, right? You want to. There's a couple of different things that you want to do. Number one is you're going to try to pick up players, obviously, to replace, right? So let's say you lost Isaiah Pacheco, you mentioned. Well, can you pick up Samaje Perine, who's likely going to be the lead running back in Kansas City? It's him and a guy named Carson Steele. Be a little bit more of a running back by committee, but still, like, there's somebody out there that potentially you could get some production out of, like, or at wide receiver, Demarcus Robinson is a guy that's interesting in LA who, he played 92% of the snaps on Sunday. So that's one of the, is you're trying to pick that up. But if you're like, oh, those people get gone, or like, I can't get them, then one of the other things you want to do is you want to try to make a trade. And so, again, without having looked at your team, like, do you have, if, for example, making this up, but let's say you have healthy running backs, but all your wide receivers, you had Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel and A.J. Brown. You're like, I got no wide receivers. I'm like, okay, but you have like 3 good running backs. And you're like, yeah, I actually got lucky there. Okay, well, then let's trade one of those running backs for a healthy wide receiver. Let's look at your depth. And if you say to me, well, I got no depth, okay, well, then let's create some depth. And like I just said, so for example, there's one area where it's really easy to create depth is quarterback, right? So like Derek Carr is off to a really hot start. He's had over 20 fantasy points in each game. Let's see, Geno Smith, he's available in almost 70% of leagues. And Geno Smith is basically like a borderline top 12 quarterback at the moment. So could you pick up one of those guys? And then let's say you have a star quarterback and you say, hey, you know what? I can live with Derek Carr or Geno Smith through the rest of the season. So, hey, would you like to trade? I have Patrick Mahomes. Will you give me somebody good for Patrick Mahomes? Because I've now picked up. Does that make sense? So, like, you're trying to create depth because you've got to have some assets to trade.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What I'm hearing is that, and I know a lot of people after the weekend, they're like, well, I'm done, I'm toast. But it sounds like you said, you just laid out 3 options that pretty much most people will be able to pursue at least one of those options.
Yeah, Amanda, I was in a league last year where a guy was 1-4 and made the playoffs. Again, it's a weekly game. Things change, after week 1 and you had Cooper Kupp and you're like, my team's the best team in the league. He got 21 targets. I'm crushing everyone. And now this week you're like, oh God, it's all in shambles. Like, totally. Things change very quickly in fantasy football. And even though your team may not look great right now, a week from now it might. So again, that's what you want to do is you want to try to, and you would roster people, try to pick up some backup running backs. And again, we're never rooting for injury, but injuries do happen. It's a violent game. And so if you have a running back on a team where the player ahead of them gets hurt, suddenly now you have some, you have value in that player. And so I think it's just about, it's way too early to give up. A lot of football left to play.
Absolutely. One more question as we kind of look ahead to this week. How do you approach questions of who to start and bench when it's kind of a close call? And second part of that question, how much do you focus on matchups, especially when it comes to playing against a strong or a weak defense?
Matchups are really important. I play a lot into it. In a tiebreaker, I'll go with a matchup. I'll also look at talent sometimes, or talent or offensive scheme. Like if you've got one, you know, I think if one guy is on a bad offense, and one guy's on a good offense, give me the guy on the good offense. Give me the guy with a better quarterback. Give me the guy that's in a game environment that we expect. You can look at whether you bet on football or not. The people that set the lines for sports betting. I have a deal with DraftKings, for example. I'm a brand ambassador for DraftKings, and so like DraftKings, like very quickly will say like, hey, this is a game that's got an over-under of 53, which is a high number. Or this is a game that has an over-under of like 38, which is a low number. And so you're like, you know what? I'm going to take the guy in the game that's projected to score a lot more points than the guy that's playing in the game that is projected to be a low-scoring game. Because if it doesn't always work out this way, but the guys at DraftKings, the team, men and women, very, very smart. And they're using all sorts of analytics to come up with these lines to make it pretty close. That's how they stay in business, right? Because if they were losing all their bets, then DraftKings would go into business. So it's a good barometer of sort of what we expect the game environment to be like, and so those are games you can target. Generally speaking, we like at Fantasy Life. I'm too busy to do this, but I've got one of my guys does projections, and we project every single player for every single game every single week. And he's really, really good. He's our director of analytics. He's the nerdiest guy you'll ever meet. But that's what you want. God bless him. Yeah. Is you want a guy that's like a crazy number cruncher. So again, you can sort of use those projections to make start-sit decisions for your team in terms of, well, this guy's projected for 100 yards and this guy's projected for 85. I'm going to go for the 100-yard guys. Again, we're trying to predict the future. It doesn't always work out, but all you can do in fantasy football is play the odds and put yourself in the best position to win. The example I like to give is blackjack, right? You're sitting on 18 and the dealer's showing 6. Well, you stay. You stay because the odds is that the dealer is going to pull a 10 and then pull another 10 and bust, and you're going to win. Now, doesn't mean that always happens. The dealer could pull another 6, right? And then a 9 and you're done, right? Or, and there's a chance that you could say, hit me and pull a 3, but the odds of that are low. And again, so all you want to do is you're playing the odds. You're just trying to put yourself in the best position to win. What's most likely to happen? It's not always going to happen, but if you play the odds like that, generally speaking, more often than not, it's going to work out similar to a blackjack table where if you sort of play the right way and you play what's more likely to happen than not, over the long run, it'll work out.
Wow. I don't know about you, Amanda, but I personally am feeling very motivated to get my roster in check tonight after I clock out. But before you go, Matthew, sorry, are you excited? Getting excited? Anyway, before you go, Matthew, we do want to play a quick game with you. I think you're going to have fun with it. It's called the Skim Skybox Draft. With people like Taylor Swift boosting attention and eyeballs on the NFL, we want to do our own draft of celebrities we'd select to turn the most heads in a game. So there's going to be 3 rounds, 3 celebrities each. Here's how it works. We each get to draft one musician, one athlete or former athlete from another sport, and one general celebrity, actor, or otherwise. And your goal is to assemble the best trio for your Skybox to get the most media coverage and the most cutaways from the game. You got it?
I do.
Blake, why don't you go first so Matthew has some time to consider his options? Then Matthew, you'll pick right after Blake, and I will pick third. We'll go musician, athlete, and then celebrity.
Okay.
At the end, we'll compare our teams, and maybe we'll even invite our audience after this to choose whose team they think would turn the most heads. So, Blake, are you ready? Which musician are you drafting to your Skybox?
I'm going to go a little uncommon here, and I will say Billie Eilish. Do I have to be giving any justifications for my answer?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Billie Eilish, unconventional. I think that she would match. You'll see, she'll fit into my lineup, and you'll see why later. That's all I'm going to say. She appeals to a wide audience.
Okay.
Matthew.
Allow me just to say, Blake, you seem lovely. This is our first time meeting. That's a terrible pick. That's a terrible, terrible pick.
All right, show
That
me
might be the worst
Matthew.
pick I've ever seen.
Show
We
me
haven't
up.
even done the rest of this draft yet, and
Show
I'm
me
already
up.
telling you right now that's the worst pick of this draft.
All right,
Um,
what do you got, Matthew?
well, unless she's not eligible, Taylor Swift, like
Oh.
she's a musician. I mean, like,
Oh,
who's
I
more
feel like she's
famous?
not allowed.
Who gets?
We
I
didn't
mean,
say that though.
You're right,
We
you're
didn't
right.
say that. She's allowed to
if
do that.
I mean, if we're saying Taylor Swift is off the table because she's sort of inspired the game, then okay. But like, you didn't say that. Again, we've talked about this earlier in terms of your, what you should do. Study the rules. And I didn't see a rule that said no, we can't play Taylor Swift. So
Right.
again, she's a musician, a very talented one, by the way. I mean, like, there's no one more famous on the planet right now than Taylor Swift.
Mhm. Unfortunately, I do think I have both of you beat. And while there is some speculation, deep speculation that this person is dead, some people think he's alive. So I'm sending Tupac to my skybox. I think that Tupac's mere presence anywhere would probably get the most eyes.
Oh my
So,
God.
questionably dead. Maybe he's around. I'm picking Tupac because again, we didn't clarify the rules. We didn't say somebody who is 100% alive.
Okay.
It's now a
God.
conspiracy theorist podcast.
I
but-
already know that Matthew's gonna drag me for my complete lineup, but I'm just gonna have to go with it anyway. So I'm gonna go with somebody who we know potentially now as an actor, but people who are maybe a bit older than me know as an athlete. Terry Crews. Because why the hell would Billie Eilish and Terry Crews be in a skybox at the same time?
I see.
Why? I feel like they would have a great time together. And he's a very likable man. And he would maybe, I'm not going to say what kind of moves he'd be pulling, but sorry, that sounded inappropriate. I mean, I just have seen him in those Old Spice commercials, and that is what I meant. He has done that chest jiggle. I feel like maybe he'd pull one out for the cameras. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I understand the concept.
Yeah.
That's not my issue. Okay.
All right, Matthew,
Um,
show
Okay,
show
so
me what you got.
which one? So we did musician. Which one is this? This is
Now you're going
This
to choose
is
an
the
athlete or a
athlete.
former retired athlete.
Okay.
Anyone who's ever been an athlete.
yeah.
Let's hear it.
I don't understand why you guys are just letting me run away with this. Like, why you just like? But I will go. If you're talking about former athlete, talk about an athlete. Like again, Terry Crews was a former athlete. Now he's sort of an actor. I'll keep in that same vein, but I'll pick somebody. I'll pick somebody that people actually care about, and that's The Rock. The Rock, who
He
played
was my
college football at the
second.
University of Miami, but obviously now an actor as well. He's a former pro wrestler as well, of course. So very much a former athlete, but he's The Rock, and he may not be as famous as Taylor Swift, but he's pretty damn close, And
Also, an odd matchup that people would not be expecting. So I'll give you that.
thank
Lots
you
of
very
memes.
much,
There'll be
Amanda.
lots
Can
of
you
memes
smell what
thought
The
of
Rock
these
is
two
cooking?
together.
I'll tell you what he's cooking. He's cooking first place for me. I'm crushing you guys like a grape in this draft. This is embarrassing.
All right, we'll see. We'll see.
Yep.
I'm going purely for scale here, and I'm picking Ronaldo. He is
Oh.
Okay.
the most famous Cristiano Ronaldo, the most famous athlete in the world. All of hundreds of millions of
gorgeous
followers
man
across
at that,
platforms. I
too.
think if we're talking pure scale and impressions, that's what I'm going for.
Yep.
You might have taken
That's
us for
fair.
that one. Oh my
All
God.
right,
That's a
Blake, you
good
gotta
pick.
round out
Okay,
your
I'm
team.
just gonna full send it. I know I'm in third place, but I would love to see Miss Liza Minnelli in that skybox. I feel like people would, again, it would just add to the mystique of what the actual hell is going on. I also think she appeals to older audiences. She appeals to the LGBTQ community. She appeals to people who watched Arrested Development, excellent television. That's it. That's all I have to say. Matthew, floor is yours.
And
What
this can be an
category is
actor or
this?
Any celebrity.
This is, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to say what category. It is celebrity. It could be an actor or otherwise.
Just not musician. You've been confident so far.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. In terms of celebrity, all right. So I've got The Rock, and I've got Taylor Swift.
What hole are you trying to fill here?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what hole I'm trying to fill. I've got a couple of choices here, but I'll go with Jay-Z. I'll go with I'll go with. Can I? I mean, I don't know if you tell me if I can do this or not. But I was going to say Jay-Z. I'll just say Jay-Z, and then because chances are,
If he brings a guest,
Oh.
lucky surprise. Yeah.
well, that's what I'm saying. Jay-Z is probably going to bring his wife, and
Mhm.
so I kind of get a bonus there, Because I've seen it. I've seen Jay-Z and Beyonce courtside at Knicks games and everything like that. You know, they often will go to like they were at the suite together. They were in a suite together at the Super Bowl as well. So I'm gonna go Jay-Z.
That's a beautiful lineup. And I'm going to round mine up to join Tupac and Cristiano Ronaldo. I'm bringing in Oprah. I'm bringing in Oprah.
My God.
And I think she can, again, scale. She can get eyes on her own, but I think that trio would obviously blow some minds for many reasons. But I think these are all we clowned Blake a bit, but I think these are all strong takes. And they would definitely absolutely light
Blake's
up
team
our
is
Instagram
terrible.
feeds.
I understand that Blake is your friend and you have to work with her. But I'm just going to tell you objectively, it's a terrible team.
Billie Eilish was a choice. Blake is decades older than both of us. I think she needs a little bit more.
Decades older, yes.
Or younger,
No.
excuse me.
No
We're
one's
decades
older. Look
than
at
her.
me. No one's older than me. But what I will
You
tell
said
you
it.
is, what I'm going to tell you girls about is that no one. Think about, again, I know something about this because I work for NBC Sports. My day job is I'm on Football Night in America, which is the pregame show to Sunday Night Football. It is the highest rated show on television, except for the only thing on TV, literally higher rated than Football Night in America, which is the pregame to Sunday Night Football, is the actual Sunday Night Football game, which is in prime time on NBC Sports every single Sunday night. So, and I know because I hear these meetings, like I'm sometimes in these conversations. And so like, we know ahead of time, like our opening game Thursday night was Ravens at the Chiefs, and we knew that Taylor Swift was going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
We knew what box she was going to be in. And so I don't know that it was decided like we're going to cut away 6 times or 3 times or 5, but I know that we are aware when there is a big name celebrity that is going to be there, and specifically a Chiefs game, Taylor Swift, right?
Yes.
And so I just think, and so what they look at is like, okay, is this interesting to our general population? Is this interesting to the football going team,
Yeah.
to the people that are watching this game? And so, yet I got news for you. The people that like Billie Eilish are not the core football
Not yet,
watching
no.
audience,
Not
or
yet,
even
Matthew.
sports watching,
Not yet.
or even sports watching audience.
Right.
Like,
You're going to watch this. You're going to listen back to this podcast in 10 years. Something's going to happen.
we're not drafting for 10 years from now. If we're drafting from 10 years from now, give me Josh Richards on TikTok. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
what are we doing here, right?
Yes,
Give me
Practical.
Mr. Beast.
Mhm.
Like, but like, you know what I mean? Like, we're like,
Work with the audience.
No
you have,
one-
not the one you
there-
want. Yeah.
Billie Eilish appeals to younger non-sports fans would be my argument,
Yeah.
right? And like, I would argue that people over the age of 35, certainly 40, don't care about Billie Eilish.
No, my father certainly does not.
And I would say that the people that care about Terry Crews or whoever you said, they're probably already watching. I think
No,
they're
the
watching.
people who are watching don't know who the hell Terry Crews is.
Oh, they know.
Stop
If they saw him, they would.
Yeah, they'd be like, oh, yeah, that's the Old Spice guy. Oh, that's the guy that can move his nipples. Like, they're like, whatever. But, like, they're not. No one's like, oh, my God, whoa, Terry Crews is at the game.
Right.
If they'd just be like, oh, yeah, I've seen that guy.
It's just
No.
my
You're
trio
not,
together.
Yes.
you're not, let me put it this way. If Terry Crews and Billie Eilish, I would argue for this, they can walk down the street just fine. I'm not saying they don't get recognized. I'm not saying they don't get stopped. Hey, can I take a picture? Can I get
Billie
an autograph?
Eilish, hard disagree. But
What?
Yeah, in
I-
Bed-Stuy. Blake.
no, in Manhattan, the stands are crazy. The stands are insane.
I get it, but I'm just saying, but it's not Taylor Swift can't walk around. Taylor Swift can't go to a supermarket without 10 security guys around her. Same with The Rock, same with Jay-Z,
The
same
Rock.
with Ronaldo. Like, but Billie Eilish can go shopping at a grocery store. You know what I mean? Like,
I just
that
don't
would be
agree
my
with you,
argument.
But that's okay.
Yeah,
That's
we
okay.
give you points for novelty, but
Terry
yeah.
Crews can definitely go shopping at a grocery store.
yeah.
Yeah. He's not facing that.
And
guess
and
there's
by the
a-
way, I don't think there's a person by the way, so we're arguing that no one over 40 cares about Billie Eilish in a significant way. I'm not saying there aren't over 40 fans, but I'm just saying her fan base,
I would never.
her
think you'd
fan
say
base
such a
is
thing.
younger.
Yeah.
Fair? That's fair.
That's
Yes.
fair, Matthew.
Liza Minnelli's fan base, those that are still alive, are,
You'd be surprised, but also yes, you're right. Not in the football loving,
no,
sports loving.
but yes, I know she is huge in the LGBTQ community, right? But that's not a football, that's not the core football watching audience. Again, I'm not trying to
Right.
generalize here. There are obviously people in that community that love and watch and enjoy football, but that's not the majority of the people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just telling you, if I'm a director of Football Night in America or Sunday Night Football or the World Cup, oh, make sure we get a shot of Liza Minnelli in the box. Like, what are we doing?
She'd be so confused.
Blake,
It'd be
Blake,
great.
you had a very idealistic
Yes.
fan acquisition strategy, which I think we can agree maybe was not the strongest. But
Perhaps
again,
not.
your idealism, we are very appreciative. So this
Yeah, and what I will say, Blake, you can now judge this. We've all agreed here. I think even you. We've agreed that you're third, and it's a distant third. It's a rebuilding year for you. You've already not many
Yes.
people get out of the draft and immediately have to start rebuilding, but it's you. That's where you're at. But
I'm just going to be a comeback kid.
sure in 2025 when I do this podcast next year. But Amanda, so Blake, but you can do the tie between me and Amanda. And here's my argument about Amanda's team. Ronaldo's a great pick. I got no issue with Ronaldo. And who was your? I know you have Tupac. We'll get to that in a second.
Oprah
but
was my final pick.
Oprah. Yeah, Oprah's tough to beat too.
Yeah, she is tough to beat.
Oprah is famous and beloved. I think I win though. I think I win on Tupac. I think that's where, because I mean, again, I got Taylor Swift, I got The Rock, and I got Jay-Z. You got Ronaldo and Oprah,
Swift and Jay-Z.
2 home runs. But honestly, I think I won the draft when Blake passed on Taylor Swift. But
in my head, she wasn't even included. But you're my guest, so I concede.
No, he's right. We didn't. If we don't say it's not allowed,
You're right.
it's allowed.
But
you're right.
anyway.
I mean, they're letting people do hip drops, and those aren't allowed. So you can do whatever you want.
It's a good point, Amanda. It's a very good point. But the last thing I'll say here is that I don't think that if Tupac's there, whether it's a hologram or he's back from the dead, if I'm the director of the World Cup or the Super Bowl or whatever, hey man, I think Tupac's in that suite. Isn't he dead? I don't know. That might be him. Do we want to open up that can of worms? No, it's a hologram. No, we're not doing that. I'm not messing with maybe he's Tupac, maybe he's not, because what am I fonting it as?
Fact checking. Yeah.
In fact, you're not like, am I going to go out there and say this guy is definitely Tupac?
Right.
Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to Chiron Tupac with a question mark? I'm avoiding that. It's the Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
It's too much is at stake.
Mhm.
Absolutely not. Give me another shot of Taylor Swift in that suite with The Rock and Jay-Z.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're going to say.
I gotta say, I love how much you humored our game. I was not expecting such, dragging to be happening to my team, but I appreciate your perspective nonetheless.
Listen, feedback is a gift. Feedback is a gift. So that concludes.
Yeah. Well,
our
listen,
roast of
this is
Blake
what I do for a
Boomerwing.
living. I analyze drafts.
Right, exactly. And you did it beautifully. I mean, if you enjoyed this and you're watching us on YouTube, tell us who did draft the best Skybox. And Matthew, this was such a treat. Thank you so much for joining us. Please tell us again where our listeners can read more of your stuff, hear and see more of your fantasy advice. Where can they get more?
Well, NBCSports.com, Rotoworld.com. I do Fantasy Football Happy Hour. It's an hour-long podcast every single day, available wherever you get podcasts. It's also on the NFL on NBC YouTube channel and on demand on Peacock. That's Monday through Friday. Sunday mornings, I do a pregame show for 2 hours, 11 a.m. to 1 o'clock Eastern, all the way up to kickoff, where we answer a bunch of questions and we go through all the latest injuries. That's also on Peacock and the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. And then, of course, as you mentioned, Football Night in America before the Sunday Night Football game. You can see me there every week on NBC Sports. I also own a website called FantasyLife.com, and we have a ton of free information, videos, podcasts, rankings that will help you win your team. There's also a premium subscription as well called Fantasy Life Plus if you want to get an extra edge. If you've done something like Blake here and you've just drafted a terrible team and you're like, what can I do? How do I get rid of Billie Eilish and Terry Crews and upgrade my team? Then we've got the tools for you that make it super easy and simple at FantasyLife.com.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you so much, Matthew.